What Doesn't Kill You by Meg Pierce. Sometimes what doesn't kill you keeps you alive to kill you later, but nothing destroys you without your permission. I spent years treading water in a storm, keeping my head up just long enough to go bare before the next crashing wave beat me down. Years clinging to the shipwrecked debris of my ideals. Smashed against the rocks of patriarchy, jagged crags I didn't know could pierce my privilege, Eurocentrism and traditions, distinct formations in the daylight, equally destructive, out of sight below the surface. Sometimes what doesn't kill you sits in the shadows, waiting until wounds have healed over, forgotten if not for the scars. Sometimes they know your weaknesses better than you do. I'd warned others about them. But in my hubris, I thought I was too strong to be broken. When others struggled, I stood by to help. When the struggle became my own, I could only survive. This is an excerpt from a poem that I wrote for this collection, Black Rootedness. Let me explain. So, West Oakland to West Africa was a project started by my good friend Carla Brundage, and she actually did 3 exchanges prior to this one. And the idea of the exchange was poets from a place in the United States would exchange poems and write poems together with poets, they would partner with poets from the African continent. So there were 3 exchanges of this. There was Oakland to West Africa, there was Hawaii to, I believe, Ghana, and then this one was, I believe, the 3rd, and it had poets from East Oakland going to East Africa and West Oakland going to West Africa. So I got involved because there were, in this 3rd iteration of exchanges, there were so many poets in the African communities, and they were working with specific clubs, that they didn't have enough partners that hadn't been involved in the other 2 exchanges that they could find to write poetry. My friend Carla knew that I was a poet, and also I used to live in West Africa, and so kind of had an affinity, I guess is the word. So I got to exchange poems with this poet from Nigeria. His name was Michael Ayomide, and we used Reiki style poetry, which meant that Michael would write a poem, and then from his last line of his poem became the first line of my poem, which is how I ended up with the first line, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." It was based on the last line of Michael's poem. And so I really enjoyed this exchange. It was a really, really interesting experience, and I loved getting to know Michael through our poems, and he really made me a better poet, I felt, and challenged me in that way. But what's interesting about this was after, what I really loved, I was also one of, I helped to, edit and organize the book as well, and so I got to read the poetry from all these different poets from mostly California, and then also Nigeria and Kenya as well. And it was so interesting seeing these exchanges, and it was so inspiring. It did become awkward when Carla and I and another friend locally in Oceanside, we decided to do a live reading of this with our African counterparts zoomed in, and then we had a couple of poets come from Oakland, and there was one poet who came down from LA, and so we came together and we did a reading of this book, and that's when it got awkward, because it became very clear, obviously I'm not Black, I'm a white reader, and though I was very involved in the project, and it was very close to my heart, I ultimately did not participate in that poetry reading, because it was the book kind of intended to be this exchange between the African diaspora, and so that was a very, very fascinating experience, and it was one of those times when I just had had to learn to like really give up my ego and step back and just, you know, let this be a space where when they needed me, you know, I could be there, and then when they didn't need me, um, to step back and let people's voices be heard. And so it was a very interesting project, and there was a lot of great poetry in here. Um, and it was very interesting to really relate to some of the poetry that was written um, by our African counterparts in particular. And so check it out. It's called Black Rootedness, and there were 54 poets involved in this project. Love for you to finish reading my poem. So go read a book.